gonna look funny. Because that time I had a funny look on my face talking about the time. Okay. I want to call the December the 19th, 2013 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order, please. We'll start out with citizens forum. Does anybody have anything they wish to say, that questions or comments that are not on the agenda tonight? One thing I would like to say is, if you haven't been by Campbell Station Park, be sure and go by in the evening. It's really pretty, and a lot of hard work has been put in by the town staff to get that many trees and that many lights done. So we'd like to thank the maintenance department for that beautiful display of trees there. So be sure and go by and see it if you haven't. My grandson, all he had to say was ooh and ah. So it is definitely an ooh and ah display there. And I think I heard him say today that they're already starting to think about next year. No other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I actually missed the article, but apparently there was an article in the New Sentinel in business section recently where they reported that Farragut has been named the 5th best city to live in Tennessee.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we knew that.
Yeah. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes for the November 21st meeting. Any comments or changes?
Move for approval.
Second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstained because I wasn't here.
And I'll
I think I wasn't here either.
As will I.
Did you get all of those, Mark?
Yeah.
Item number 3 on the agenda, discussion and public hearing of a concept plan for the addition to the Ridgeland subdivision, tax map 130, part of parcel 073, 11.3 acres, 23 lot, zone R2. Brandywine of Farragut LLC applicant. We've been asked to postpone that. Do I have a
Move for postponement.
second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 4, discussion and public hearing on a concept plan for Bridgewater Phase 2, Unit 1, tax map 152, parcel 25.01, 23.69 acres, 40 lots, zone R-1, OSR, placemaker development applicants. Also, we've been asked to postpone this. Do I have a
Move for postponement.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 5, discussion and public hearing on an amendment to the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, to consider providing for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, with single-family residential zone neighborhoods. This is for discussion only again tonight. We have had comments, and those have been kind of compiled here, and we want to go over those before a ordinance is finalized for the future.
Yeah, in your packets was just some draft wording that we put together dealing with this matter that tried to incorporate the comments that we received over the past couple of months from you all. Some of this dealt with setbacks, some of it dealt with lot sizes, different things like that. It's still proposed at this point as an overlay district, and this is still just a discussion. And this is, this is currently proposed as an overlay district. There's different ways to tackle this if you all want to pursue this. You could do it through an overlay district. You could do it through a new zoning district where it would only apply to new subdivisions and they'd have to be zoned for this kind of use. You could do it within existing zoning districts and just make it subject to certain specific requirements within existing zoning districts. But currently the draft wording is proposes as an overlay district. And again, we tried to incorporate the comments that we received into this. There's some things that, basically the way this is worded currently, you would have to have, as far as the minimum area, 15 acres of contiguous lots to even apply for a rezoning request for this overlay. That's pretty unlikely, in my opinion, with existing subdivisions in the town. Really, this is probably something that would be more potentially appropriate for new developments, and that's why I mentioned earlier you could one avenue you could consider if you want to pursue this at all is to go with a completely new zoning district where this would be a potential, but you'd have to rezone property to that zoning district in order for it to apply. So I don't know if y'all have any questions in the draft language. I know there's quite a few people here.
Before we go on,
yeah.
Mark, would you define overlay district for us, please?
An overlay district is if you in the zoning districts, you have like a base zoning district, like you may have a lot that's zoned commercial, C1. Let's say part of that lot has a floodplain that meanders through a portion of it. We have a floodplain overlay zoning district, and that means that for that particular lot, not only do they have to adhere to the C1 requirements, but they also have to adhere to that additional layer of requirements that are in the floodplain overlay. So that's kind of the way this would work. You still have to adhere to, the base zoning, but then you have this additional overlay of requirement stipulations that you would also have to satisfy.
Does anyone up here have any questions or
I
comments?
do. On item 2, under applicability, would you please read A and explain demolition of structures and why that would be in there?
Let's see. The requirements of the ADU overlay district apply to all development, exterior alterations, additions, and demolitions of structures on all lots located in the zoning districts noted above. In addition to all requirements of the underlying base zoning districts. That wouldn't, I'd not see where that would really apply.
It sounds like to me you tear down the primary residence and build a smaller one and build another rental unit behind it. Is that the idea there?
I don't think that's the idea there, no.
What was the source of that?
I don't know.
We probably used the wording out of other overlay districts.
Yeah, I
Probably
mean,
just
some of
Cut and
this
pasted it.
was in the previous draft, and we did look at other, overlay districts and other communities that had accessory dwelling units. So my guess is that's some of this was taken from there.
I can provide a little more. Gary Palmer, Assistant Town Administrator. A lot of that language was just an amalgamation of a bunch of different ordinances that I pulled from other cities that had it. So there might be some language in there that I wouldn't be able to explain, the demolition. A lot of that stuff is some cut and paste carryover.
Okay, another question is, why is agricultural zone in this? Because it's limited to 5 acres and you can have 3 accessory dwelling units in an agricultural zone by special permit.
I think that was one of the comments we received a couple of months ago, was dealing with agriculture.
So it really wouldn't need to be in there at all, would it?
It doesn't have to be. Again, this is,
I'm not aware of any ADUs being allowed in any zoning district if you have one contiguous parcel. So there may be something in there that Betty's discovered that,
Well, I read agricultural zoning.
Yeah, we changed some of the requirements based on some of the comments as far as having a larger acreage parcel. You could have,
what Betty's talking about, she's talking about that it actually exists today,
It's already covered, I think.
that it's already
Okay.
covered in the agricultural district. Excuse me, I didn't realize that we could do an ADU in any district, irrespective of zoning. It was one ADU per contiguous lot. Or it'd be a primary dwelling, it'd be a PDU instead of an ADU, but nevertheless, that might be something we might want to dig into a little bit.
I believe it is in the text of that,
yeah, it's a
zone-
special
agriculture.
exception. It's not a
Yes.
use by right. So
Okay,
it's-
so
it
it
would
was-
have to go
By special.
through.
You go through the BZA.
It would have to go through a special exception process. This just never come up, so I apologize. I wasn't really familiar with that
Okay.
particular
I didn't
stipulation.
see any of my suggestions in here.
What? Excuse me, could you come up to the microphone, please? We need you to tell us who you are and give us your address.
I'm Ken Fraser, and I live in Village Green, 217 Village Green Parkway. My question was, could you put the overlay definition that you were going through in terms of the ADU instead of the example you gave? For example, if we have in my business, we would call it a plot plan of a residential area. I assume an overlay would be placed over that, but would it just cover maybe part of that R1 zone?
Well, as it's worded currently, you'd have to go through a rezoning process, and you have to have at least 15 acres. Okay, so that's two biggies right there. If you were to do that, and there was buy-in, and there was 15 acres of contiguous lots that were rezoned, obviously the property owners would have to want that. Then the stipulations in the overlay district would also apply to those subject lots, not anything beyond it, just in what's rezoned to the overlay district. So that means within that particular area, someone could possibly apply for an accessory dwelling unit, provided it met all the other criteria in the overlay district.
But if I'm picturing maps I've seen with an area blocked out and it says R1,
Yes.
okay? Now, your overlay, does that come on top of the R1 zone that I've just described?
It would if the area was rezoned. It would be R1 with an overlay of ADU.
Would that
accessory.
overlay take up the whole R1 or just a portion of it that would be suitable for the ADU?
It would take up the lots that were involved in the rezoning request, which would have to include the entire lot of all the lots that are involved in the rezoning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I had some other comments. Shall I wait until
Go ahead.
later or just
Go. That's fine.
keep going?
Keep going.
I wish I was better organized, but on this whole subject, I'm rather dismayed and puzzled on it because, and I think I've mentioned this once before, that August 17th, you folks took a vote, and the gist of it was you didn't care to proceed any further with this. And here we are now in December, and we're still talking about it. And there was a gap from, I guess, September 19th, where a presentation was made here. Until now, it's come up again publicly. One other meeting was canceled, and I wondered, what are they doing, getting their ducks in a line for a better assault on this whole question? So the whole thing, I have to be careful what words I use, but it just doesn't look right the way this has been going, especially when you start out with a vote that you don't want to go further with this. So we have lined up on one side an alderman, the developer, and the town administrators. The alderman, it turns out, has a stake in it on a personal basis because he has a situation that fits the ADU. The developer, he has the usual developer agenda. And the town administrators, that's what they do, is to promote ideas like this, in my view. So I have to wonder if the Planning Commission at one time wasn't going to go ahead with this, what pressures are being brought to bear? Is it because I may have a program or an idea that I want to get through at some future time? Maybe I have to go along with this in order to get some support later on. Maybe it doesn't work that way with this political group, but many times I think you will agree that it does. So the whole thing troubles me. And then I have to look down the road after this initial use of ADU, if it is approved, where we have Granny waving up to the big house, she'd like to come up for supper, and no, not tonight, we're watching reruns of Jeopardy. So you have the present situation, but later, after Granny maybe isn't there anymore, and you still have the house, but you have kids that are college age, and maybe they don't want to stay in the big house when they're going to college, because I know with my own kids, that was the last thing in the world that they wanted, was to be in our house. They wanted a dorm or an apartment. So here we have maybe some college age students in the residence, and I can see cars lined up in the driveway, and I can hear the loud music in the summertime coming through the open windows, and just something that is not what you want in a residential neighborhood. And you don't know 10 years from now what you're going to have from this kind of a agreement, or whatever you want to call it. So I worry about the slippery slope. What's going to happen 10 years from now? It may sound like a good idea now, but what about then? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to come back to the comment you had about the first vote that was conducted. What would you say it was in August?
Yes.
And I'm not sure that then the Planning Commission's position has changed at all. However, the procedure that we used for that vote has been called into question.
Well, I know you have to have a formal resolution.
Saying that we didn't do an actual up or down vote. We basically tabled it, in which, under my interpretation of the ordinance, that's sufficient. But on other interpretations, it's not.
Yeah.
We either have to, according to that other interpretations, we have to take this thing and either make it in some sort of viable thing, then vote it down or up, preferably down, and we're wrapped up in a procedural matter, and I'm not very happy about it.
Well, it came up again the 19th of September, but, excuse me, no vote was taken then, it was just discussed. But something I'm very unhappy about is, I went to a BOMA meeting on the 26th of September, and I spoke to Mr. Palmer, and I said, you know, you have a resolution, resolution here and an ordinance, proposed drafts. And I said, the wording in these looks like it was agreed that you proceed with this. There were things like, it's approved that. And I said, if the Planning Commission took a vote that they weren't going to go ahead, why would you word the resolution and the ordinance like you were going ahead with it? And he said, well, I know I have some wording problems with it, and I'm going to have to work on it and fix that up. That was on the 26th, I guess it was, of September. The 19th was when he presented this. So he wasn't very truthful. He made believe that, oh, yeah, I know there's a problem with it, and I'll take care of it. All the time, he was proceeding with it as if you had approved it. So I didn't feel good about that. I had to get that off my chest. I'm sorry.
Let me remind you that the Planning Commission recommends. They do not vote on ordinances.
I'm sorry.
They recommend, this group recommends to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
BOMA.
And we are the people on the BOMA that make the decisions.
Yes, and the final decision.
Yes.
But if that was the mindset of the commission, that you were not going to go ahead with it, doesn't that tell you something?
It tells me that it's irrelevant, because discussions go back and forth, and it doesn't matter who said what when. It matters what the recommendation ends up being from this body.
My complaint was that Mr. Palmer wasn't being very truthful with me. And his explanation might be, I didn't understand him. That won't fly. I shouldn't have brought it up in the first place. It's a minor thing compared with this whole situation, if that's what you were referring to.
Well, I have a question I'm going to ask, and that is, as I see it, there is very little land in Farragut that could accommodate what we're talking about here. And I'd like to have some estimate of what that area amounts to. Because if there's such a small pieces of land that you can do such a thing on, what's the point?
Well,
You obviously can't come into Sugarwood and put another building behind my house or any other house in Sugarwood. The lots are about 1/3 acre. And so that describes most of the town. And I just don't get it.
Well, Mayor, I'll offer some commentary, because I may have been the one that got some legs underneath this thing. First of all, Mr. Free, I always appreciate your comments. One thing I applaud you. You always cut to the chase. But, I think it's important for everybody in here to know that there's no grand conspiracy theory going on behind the scenes here. So that, that needs to be cleared up. Everybody within this community, certainly during the time I've lived here, which has been quite a while now, is done up front and forthright with complete honesty on the front end. So that needs to be known. I believe the August 17th meeting was one that I was not at, and to my knowledge, there was never a formal vote.
No, that's true.
That was
I
taken.
understand that.
Yeah, but I think it's important, because it was stated there was a vote taken. There never was a vote taken, so that's critical.
Well, you had to vote to come up with this consensus. It was recognized as a consensus vote.
It was an expression of interest relative to that. And I personally thought it had gone away, because there saw no sentiment really basically for it.
Yeah, and there is a difference
That
between a
doesn't
consensus and a vote.
preclude the right of a citizen, even if it's an alderman or whoever, to pursue something and informally through that. That doesn't mean it's a done deal or anything. I can guarantee you there's been no pressure.
Well, it looks like strange, though, is this came up August 17th. I think it came up even before that.
Yeah.
Anyway, August 17th, and here we are in December, and a big gap from September, the middle of September until now. And to me, on the outside, because I don't know you folks, it looks like, there's something going on here. Is there a group that's working on the Planning Commission to get them to change their opinion on this project?
Stop that right
No.
Yep.
No.
We cannot talk to each other except here,
Right.
I understand that.
and we follow that
Absolutely.
religiously.
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, then I'd like to finish my commentary, if I may. It's important that, quite frankly, if you look at how this has proceeded, it's been done the proper way. There's been ongoing discussion. We've taken a break when a break needed to be taken. Last month, if I recall correctly, because I was not here last month, it was asked to be, I don't know if the proper term is postponed, because 4 of the members of this body were gone, and it said, let's
very
wait to
important to have that kind of
continue the discussion. But going back a few meetings, I was one that kind of got legs underneath it again. I personally don't think the discussion got a fair shake in the very first meeting that I was at, when there was a list of developments. One of them was yours, and there was several existing ones that people went, whoa, I don't want this in my backyard. I don't think that would, I think I can speak for Alderman Markley on this particular issue, because that wasn't his intent. It was never brought up to me anyways, and Bob can speak later if he chooses, to do this in existing developments. Like the mayor said, it's a small piece of our community that it would fit into. However, I can say on a personal basis, I do see the need for it. I get it. Do I have a personal need for it? I don't. I may sometime in the future.
Do you see the downside later on?
Oh, yeah.
Slippery slope?
Absolutely. That's why we have these discussions, and that's why this has been going on for 5 months. And again, that's what you want to have happen. If you read through here, it would be very limited. What you brought up could happen, but quite frankly, that could happen in any residential neighborhood we have today. We dealt with a noise issue just a few months ago over a fan. In Fox Den, we had half the community fired up about it.
But here the chance is greater, because Granny isn't going to be there for a long time. And what's going to happen to that house later? You've got kids growing up. It goes on and on.
Yeah, that may be true, but at the same token, if we lived in fear of every what if and maybe, we would never vote yes on anything. So, there gets to be a balance there. Your comments are correct. I can't say you're wrong in what could happen, but we need to take all that into context. So with that said, my final comment at this point would be, my intent has never been to have this extend over any existing developments. In fact, the main development that we've talked about this having potential with has been, what's the name of the darn thing now? Split Rail Farms, thank you.
Yeah, then why are we talking about an overlay? It sounded to me like you've got an existing R1 area, and there's going to be an overlay over that.
Well, as Mark said earlier, though, he has written it as an overlay at this point, but we could limit it to simply new zoning and new development.
I'd feel better if that were the case.
He's just laid this out. He's taken everybody's commentary, and he's laid out a draft. If I heard the chairman correctly earlier, this is for discussion purposes only this evening again. So, this is something you should find some comfort in the fact that there is a level of concern about this, because that's why we have this ongoing discussion.
That's good. I'm glad. I've taken up too much of your time, and I appreciate it very much.
It looks like to me this is up for a vote tonight, because it says to be filled out at meeting, motion by, second, succeeds, fail.
But we
No.
don't have to.
I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent
No,
was to
it's-
discuss.
Why was it in there?
Well, the recommendation is that it's a workshop and just discuss the
What?
course of
Well, I
action.
see that, but then this shouldn't be in there either, because
I think something that was important to me with this from day one,
Or the standard.
It's not in an ordinance
just part of the
format
template, I
anyway.
think.
It's
Yeah.
not,
right, I think so too.
cannot be voted on.
what?
They use a standard template to fill out the information on here for us.
J-
On that, and that just happens to be a part of that template.
But it has to be put in an
Right.
ordinance format, a resolution.
Right,
in
this is not an
So
ordinance
this
format.
is
I would pay
purely
attention
just
to that.
None of my
discussion.
comments are incorporated in here.
Well,
None of them.
Well, I think this is the opportunity for us to discuss the benefits and also the pitfalls of this. And something that was very important to me, that whether it's be a base zoning district or an overlay, is that it would require 100% unanimous property owners to sign off on this. I would never want to shoehorn this or shove it down anybody's throat and say, oh, by the way, you live in Hickory Woods, and so now your neighbors can get this. Right. And so once we kind of worked on this, we really felt like the general direction. Generally, our board's very skeptical of this. It is what it is. It's new and it's different. It's weird. But some of us kind of see a need in certain areas. But the general direction we are going towards it's not applicable to existing subdivisions. This would be something that possibly could be used to overlay a new proposed subdivision or a subdivision without any homeowners in it. And one of the developers of I guess you were talking about the split rail, had felt like that it would be good for his neighborhood because of his lot size, and he doesn't have any homeowners. So every homeowner that would buy into that subdivision would have the full disclosure of knowing from day one it is possible that you would have an apartment in your neighbor's backyard with some wild college kids. We're thinking worst case scenario that you brought up. It is possible. Because we would never want to surprise somebody down the road and say, oh, I didn't know this could ever happen. Because I personally would have a real issue with that if it happened in my backyard or in my neighbor's backyard. So I think what's important tonight is I'd like to hear some of the community. Let's discuss, what are the pitfalls and what are the things that could be good out of it? And does one outweigh the other? And if the pitfalls just outweigh all the great things about it, then, we probably don't really make a recommendation. I'm speaking for myself, not for my board, or whatever recommendation we send up the food chain to the board, mayor, and alderman is probably not going to be real positive in acceptance of this. But I think that's kind of what this is about, is to discuss what are the merits and what are the dangers. So if there's anybody else here, I'd like to kind of hear, and I'd also like to hear Bob Markley kind of go back through the basics of it, because I think there's a lot of folks that are scared of the unknown, and I think once everybody understands that this doesn't apply to new subdivisions, and of course Bob may say, hey, I want it to apply to new subdivisions, and I personally might have a problem with that, but I don't think that's the direction that Bob wants to go with this, even though it wouldn't help Bob in his own personal house, but it might allow future developments. So we would like to have some discussion about it and see kind of what everybody's feelings are.
Go ahead.
My name is Mike Singletary, and I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association at Fort West Subdivision. And I haven't read what has been proposed, so there are a lot of unclarities to me. But just looking at the item on this agenda, Chapter 3, to consider providing for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, within single-family residentially zoned neighborhoods. That's pretty general. And my community does not permit outbuildings or accessory buildings, and we think that they would be very detrimental in our neighborhood. We have covenants that are chartered by the town, and so we think that would be very detrimental. But so if this group can assure me that it does not impact existing subdivisions, then that's probably my main concern. But I would want that concern, because if it couldn't be assured definitively, then we would have strong objections. And then there was a question also in my mind of whether, if council approves a recommendation proposed here, would that override the neighborhood association covenants?
That's a good question.
So uncertainties, I'm just not sure of what all this implies. But you can see my concern, and that's what I wanted to bring when I came tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Singletary, while you have the mic, Mike, while you're up there, what are your thoughts about the ADUs, these accessory dwelling units in new subdivisions? The reason I'm just trying to pick on you, Mike and I we're in Rotary together, so I know I can pick on him a little bit. But I see your
point, and I think if you have a new subdivision with existing rules at the time of purchase, the person knows what he's getting into with those rules. Not a problem in my mind.
Generally speaking, having an ADU for a teenager or a college student or your grandparent or parent, and then eventually as a rental unit, what are your thoughts about that?
There's a new subdivision, and I buy a piece of property in that subdivision. If I buy it knowing that the rules allow for accessory dwelling units, then that's my privilege and concern to deal with.
Let me ask you a question.
I think that would be up to the purchaser.
How do you feel about if it's on the property next to your property?
Yeah.
And it's not in you're in the existing subdivision that butts up against the new subdivision.
So if it were in a subdivision adjacent to mine, you're saying?
You're looking at the accessory unit out of your back window.
Yeah.
Well, we
How do you feel about
can't, I feel like we can't control what people do on property outside of our
You can
neighborhood.
control this new subdivision by not having it allowed that new subdivision.
Yeah.
He's got a
That's my
point. I mean,
You
you're,
can't just look at what's contained in that subdivision.
Yeah, for
You have to look
instance,
at the, at
Hickory
what
Woods
surrounds
and
that
Andover
subdivision.
are back-to-back.
I'm sorry.
They affect each other.
well, it should be like the Montgomery farm next to Fort West. If that farm, Tucker Montgomery's farm, got developed, albeit there's actually a walking trail that divides most of it, but nevertheless, if there was an adjacent farm, I guess we'd like to just kind of get just what your thought is on just the idea in general, because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get some feedback about hey, is this something good that would make sense in new subdivisions?
Well, again, what I said a moment ago, and I guess this is what I think, is that if there is a new subdivision and the rules of that subdivision are laid out for the person purchasing the property to deal with, then I think it's up to them how they use it within the rules. I can't see how my neighborhood of Fort West could object to what people do in some other neighborhoods.
Well, you're a resident of Farragut, and so this is the juncture to object to something that's different in the future that hasn't been allowed in development today. Or this is something to support, saying, gosh, under certain circumstances, and if your lots, I think right now, do we have minimum 1 acre size lots is kind of what we're proposing. So I think yours are probably minimum half acre. I can't remember if you're R1 or R2.
I don't know.
But you're anywhere, you're minimum either 15,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet. So, but under certain circumstances and conditions, I guess that's what we're trying to do. Is this something good for the community that makes sense under certain conditions? Large 1 acre, we've not developed 1 acre subdivisions. Steeplechase is probably the only thing I can think of that's one subdivision where every lot is over an acre. Maybe
Bel Air is, I think.
Bel Air.
Bel Air's pretty, have big lots. So it hasn't been done in a long time. And most developers won't do it because they can't get the density, and you got to get the density in there to make more money.
Well, if you approved it with the new subdivision concept, if you approved it, would that then apply to all the subdividable land in the
That is possible, yes. If
think
there's
that- I think
like
that
the
would
farmland on McPhee Road that hasn't been developed, this could potentially be an overlay district on that undeveloped farmland that is, assuming it's properly zoned and so forth. But we've pretty much covered the R1s, the R2s, and the agricultural. So it's pretty much, it could apply to any undeveloped land in the town that's residential agricultural.
Yeah, I would be a little reluctant about. In other words, if there is a neighborhood that's a new subdivision being developed, I can see a subdivision being different like that and not being objectionable. If you apply that across the board so that any new subdivision had to deal with that, then it seems to me that puts a burden on the developer that would be unnecessary.
That's the benefit of having the overlay district, is it would be a case-by-case basis. So any developer that came to the staff and to the planning commission with a plan would not automatically have this as part of their new subdivision. This would be something with a lot of hoops that they would have to jump through and apply for the overlay district to even be applicable to their subdivision. So let's say the Montgomery farm over there, which is probably zoned R1, R2, something like that, and if they wanted to do it, they would not only have to apply to all the R1 and R2, or whichever one applies today, they would also have to come in and apply to actually rezone or overlay this new ADU district on top of it. And then that's the point where, matter of fact, every adjacent homeowner, actually I'll rephrase that, every adjacent landowner, whether they live there or they don't live there, would get a postcard in the mail that says, hey, the property next door to you is going through a rezoning. You may want to be aware of it. And that's when folks in Fort West, if could object to it if they wanted to, or if they felt like, hey, this doesn't fit what we talked about whenever, or this is not a good fit for the general neighborhood or neighborhood area. So it would definitely not apply. It would not apply across the board to anything. It would be on a case by case basis. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misinterpreting anything as to the direction that we're going. Is that right, Mark? Mm-hmm. Okay. Does that give you some satisfaction knowing that it's not a widespread?
Yeah, if it doesn't affect my neighborhood and if it does not affect all subsequent neighborhoods,
Okay.
that's okay with me.
I would remind you that what abuts your neighborhood affects your neighborhood.
That's right.
That's true.
You seem to think there's a moat or a curtain around your neighborhood. You can contain what what this other new subdivision does inside their boundary. It seems to be all right in your mind. They can do whatever they want to. But I would remind you, every person that butts up to that piece of new subdivision is affected by what's happening in its boundary. So that could be abutting your backyard if you're on the periphery of Fort West.
He's right.
You're saying that in the context that, say, a service station went up on the
This
boundary
is
of
your
our
piece
property.
of property, and
Right.
this is the lot in the new subdivision. They butt up against each other.
Yeah.
Okay? If there's an accessory dwelling in your backyard, it's right in your backyard too, almost.
What he's saying is you're getting a neighbor, whether
You can't just isolate
Right.
what's happening in that subdivision.
yeah,
You have to look
they're your neighbor, they're just not in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
So,
I understand.
thanks for speaking tonight, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you address that, I wonder, is there a way to put in, I don't know if this sounds naive or not, if something happens like that, where someone starts developing land right behind that neighborhood, can we insist or have it in here that they have to have a buffer between the two?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
because that's what we're doing tonight.
we
We're,
have
we're
buffers.
wordsmithing it. You know,
But just
if
need to
we
be
support
correct
it,
to How to understand what's happening, that's all I'm.
Yeah, you could
Right.
require a buffer strip of a certain width for properties that would have this overlay.
well, you could also, we've talked about setbacks.
You could have additional setbacks beyond what's proposed here. We did increase those from what the original proposal was, but it could be, again, this is just for discussion, it could be whatever, you know.
Right.
It's not necessarily just 20 feet from the side or rear.
Right.
Good evening. My name
I
is.
still have no idea of what any useful purpose doing that in this community would have. I mean, so you can build a 800-foot small thing out there to put your college-age kids out, and then you got this thing left. When they go away in a few years, it's can't be. But the way this ordinance proposed ordinance is worded, it could be rental property, and then that's another issue, rather than property used by the property owner's dependents or family.
Well, the other thing that could happen, while you don't know it's going to happen, is that the accessory building would be rented.
Yeah, this
Would you want that?
pretty much says it will.
We have
Okay.
somebody else to make comments.
Thank you. Christy Holsey, 11724 Weather Vane Drive. I am the president of the Village Green Homeowners Association. I was requested to come here by my board to represent them. They actually had this discussion amongst themselves this week and asked me to come and let you know that they are opposed to this ordinance. If you want to talk phone calls, I can tell you my phone has been ringing off the hook. I have 462 lots, and numerous people have been calling me. I was not aware of this until the phone calls started this week about your meeting. I can tell you that the general consensus among my members at this particular moment is their concern for opening the floodgate, regardless of whether it is on a new development or whether it's an overlay. They feel that approving this would open the door for someone to amend down the road to have it happen in our subdivision. And as Mr. Singleton's subdivision says, we have the same thing. We have bylaws and charters that say you are not allowed to have any exterior buildings detached from your home. And so that tends to be their primary concern, at least from the phone calls that I have received, is also what the mayor said. It ending up starting out as a mother-in-law residency, a college residency for the son that comes home, but it's going to end up being a rental lot on the property, and that's where their concern was.
Thank you.
you. I agree with you, by the way. In fact, across the street from us, we have a house that's rented to somebody all the time. The last renters had about 3 families in the house and about 10 cars. And we're glad they're not there.
Yes, and we have that in our subdivision too, and it is a.
Don't think it can't happen.
Oh, it can. It's a discussion that we have at every board meeting. Is some of our rental properties are, they struggle to follow the bylaws, and it becomes an issue for the neighbors in a great way. So
I do think, though, as a community, you're correct in what you're saying. I do think, though, as a community, we need to be careful, because everything that has been stated in the last 30 seconds, it's not just renters. Just because people rent doesn't mean that they're not welcome in our community. Every issue that's been raised.
Own the house.
Yeah, but every issue that's been raised happens with people that own their homes. I bet if you went around this room, you could find somebody that has a problem with their neighbor at one time or another, and they own the house. So I just want to be careful. You know, we have a reputation as a community of being a little unwelcoming at times, and I don't want statements to be out there that we don't believe people that rent aren't worthy to be here. So we got to be careful about that.
I don't think that's.
No, I know that wasn't the intent, but I've seen how things end up.
I have a question. If the owner's supposed to live in the primary residence, and he gets transferred to wherever, he rents that house, and he already has a renter in the back, how's the town going to take care of that? Does not in any way comply with what we have before us tonight, and it's going to happen, and very soon, because with the market the way it is today, and people take jobs wherever they're getting, there are a lot of owners who can't sell their house, yet they have to leave town. So how is that going to be addressed? Now, Mr. Frazier raised a good point. What about 10 years down the road? I happened to talk to someone from Macon, Georgia, who lives in just such a subdivision. Every house there has an AD unit. It was built, this development was in 1890. For 100 years, everything was fine. But then they had 3 families. Until that time, in the early days, these little ADUs were built for either a caregiver of the main house or whatever, and or child care. But then when people no longer afforded those types of people to work for them and live on the property, they only used it as a guest house. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, 3 families moved in and immediately started renting their ADU. A problem has developed in traffic, no place to park all the cars. Children no longer feel safe to go down the street. These renters are not compatible with the neighborhood, and that is a major, major concern.
So, and one thing I must add to that is that we're not talking about a black and white situation. You can have these issues, as Ron says, in the current.
Put your microphone up here.
You can have these situations in the current status with the houses, but what I'm totally against is adding to the probabilities and the potential increase in that happening. You know, we can control to some degree what we have, and it's going to happen statistically. There's going to be some random distribution throughout all the subdivisions, and probably seeing a little bit of this now. But what we can do is increase the probability it's going to happen in not only maybe the short term, but the long term for sure, that it's going to increase with this type of exposure. So I think we nip it in the bud.
Jeff Elliott, 12617 Red Canyon Road, also in Fort West. Been approached by a number of people on this. I'm glad to listen to the great discussion going on this evening and some of the clarifications of some of the things that have been floating around. But I would go back to paraphrase our mayor's comments of why are we even going there? What's the point of this if it's so restricted, so limited, and we do have areas that you can have rental property in, but why even open the door for single-family residential homes to this opportunity? I just don't see it. If you want to modify an existing home to take care of a wayward child, or you want to renovate your bonus room or your garage, there are options to do for things like that. But when this door is opened, it opens up a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges for down the road. And I'm just not seeing or hearing any particular reasons for why this should be taking place. Why are we even going there? What's the point of this when it's so restrictive to begin with and it's so isolated And again, it just opens up, this is a single-family residential community, primarily. We are open, as Alderman Honkin shared, to renters. There's nothing, we have good people there, but primarily that's the backbone. And if we're opening up the door, that's my concern. And I'm again, not seeing what the purpose is behind this and why even go there. Why raise that specter of the opportunity for additional issues down the road? And I would not want the property behind our subdivision. I don't live on that border, but if I did, it would concern me if down the road someone were to have a rental piece of property there and all of a sudden I'm looking out at it. And that puts a person in a situation that is really challenging. And even with the covenants and restrictions, again, I just look at it as why go there? And I'm not in favor of this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Walt Hanson, 319 Quill Point Road. I'm current treasurer for our HOA, past president over there at Rockwell Farm. First of all, I don't even know what an accessory dwelling unit is. We got here because of the emails flying with regards to somebody wanting to build a man cave in the back. Okay? So I don't like shooting from the hip, not knowing what I'm talking about. I'm not a politician, okay? But I do know of subdivisions and plats and covenants and declarations are recorded as part of that land, and that's what we are required to comply with because we're all trying to fit a number of people on a small plot, okay, which was part of that farm at one point in time. So anything that that affects our covenants would be upsetting to us, because we're basically quarter-acre lots, and we do have renters. And I used to be a renter. I used to be a landlord, and now I'm an owner. And I've probably seen these things at other places where I moved. And some were great, and some were not so great. But right now, I don't want to see something where the town's going to impose something which is going to affect how our covenants are written. And affects that. Because right now what we're dealing with is RVs parked in the back, covered up. And I guess they're close to being an accessory dwelling unit, you know, or could be, where we want them parked at a parking lot someplace else. And we have appurtenances in the back that we're trying to remedy, as other places are. So we don't really have the room, so I would hope that the overlay doesn't apply to existing subdivisions where the acreage isn't adequate for it. As a separate individual owner within the town of Farragut, not speaking on as a board or as a neighborhood, accessory dwelling units. Don't know really, as I indicated, what you're talking about, but I've seen something and I've visited people that have it, and actually up there by Smith Road, that Miller establishment looks like it's ideal for an accessory dwelling unit. The carriage house probably could hold 3 families in it. But that said, I've seen when we lived up in New England with the salt boxes and you having a separate garage, and you have a place where you can accommodate the Christmas enclave as they come in their separate rooms, but everybody comes to the main house to have dinner and everything. The best that you have is bedrooms and a bath, separate and apart, kind of like Lanai out in Hawaii, but it's all built and designed according to what the developer has, so it looks to be and is designed to be a single home that wraps, or it has some kind of breezeway that has an attachment, but not something where granny's out back, set it back by 500 feet, because I've seen that in other states as well. So I believe the acreage is necessary, and I don't see it where we have a number of our subdivisions that have small acre lots. So we are in the same situation as Fort West, where we have that Montgomery farm behind us. What you call an accessory dwelling unit, how you constrain it so you can preclude it from being multiple families being there, not making it independent
homes of sorts, enforcing the ordinance. And I recognize that you're even considering an ordinance, and sometimes you may decide it's not worth the effort to create an ordinance to allow a door to be opened. So at this point in time, we're happy to not have a door to be opened.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, this has been pretty interesting. It seems like we've kicked up quite a bit of excitement here. I'm frankly a little baffled and mystified that.
Would you, just for the record, tell us who you are?
Sorry. My name is Bob Markley. I live at 424 Heathermore Drive, and alderman from Ward 1. And I'm the one who precipitated all this. And frankly, I'm kind of baffled and mystified that it seems to be such a great controversy. First of all, I hear the fear of people who live in existing neighborhoods, and just want to put that to rest. There is no intention of trying to make this apply to existing neighborhoods, but it is, as Mayor McGill said, there's not that many places in town where there would even be the opportunity to do it. Why do it? Why even do this? The mayor asked the question, and I would respond to that there is for many years there's been emerging in the U.S. a trend that is to the point of being a mega trend now, of the graying of America, multi-generational households, the rise in divorce, bounce-back kids, and college kids graduating, very few opportunities, a lot of them having to come back home. And so I think the marketplace will decide if there's a need, and I would like to, before I go any further, correct Mr. Frazier's rather egregious assumption and I would say assertion that I have a stake in this. I would like to say categorically that I have no stake in this, no dog in this hunt, no investment in any subdivision that's affected by this in any way. I have felt for years.
You said yourself that you have family that fit this situation. That's what I was referring to. I don't mean you have a financial stake or anything.
Okay, well, it sounded different from the podium. Okay. Well, I have children, and I had a father who passed away about 10 years ago. He was 89 years old and came to live with us for a year before he passed away. So I am intimately familiar with this situation. So I guess in that respect, I did have a very big stake in it at that point. But this is something I've been a proponent of for years. I've seen it happen. I've lived in Baltimore. I've lived in Dallas. I've lived in Fort Worth, Texas. In many areas, this is no novelty. This is nothing new. It's not an innovation. This has been around for hundreds of years, probably for millennia, and it's been done very successfully and tastefully. And like anything,